Welcome back to Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the grimoire with 2 M's. Let's turn some pages today. Alright. Okay. Yes, here we are. Okay. Swabians, that's how it's pronounced. Okay, without further ado, the Seven Swabians. 7 Swabians were once together. The first was Master Scholes, the second, Jackly, the third, Marley, the fourth, Jurgly, the fifth, Michael, and the sixth, Hans, the seventh, Wheatley. All 7 had made up their minds to travel about the world to seek adventures and perform great deeds. But in order that they might go in security with arms in their hands, they thought it would be advisable that they should have one solitary but very strong and very long spear made for them. This spear all 7 of them took in their hands at once, and in front walked the boldest and bravest, and that was Master Scholes, and the others followed in a row, and Wheatley was the last. Then it came to pass one day in the haymaking month, July, when they had walked a long distance and still had a long way to go before they reached the village where they were to pass the night, that as they were in a meadow in the twilight, a great beetle or hornet flew by them from behind a bush and hummed in a menacing manner. Master Scholes was so terrified that he all but dropped the spear, and a cold perspiration broke out over his whole body. "Listen, listen," cried he to his comrades. "Good heavens, I hear a drum." Jackly, who was behind him holding the spear, and who perceived some kind of smell, said, "Something is most certainly going on, for I taste powder and matches." At these words, Master Scholes began to take to flight, and in a moment it jumped over a hedge. But as he just happened to jump onto the teeth of a rake, which had been left lying there after the haymaking, the handle of it struck against his face and gave him a tremendous blow. "Oh dear," screamed Master Scholes. "Take me prisoner, I surrender, I surrender." The other 6 all leapt over, one on top of the other, crying, "If you surrender, I surrender too. If you surrender, I surrender too." At length, as no enemy was there to bind and take them away, they saw that they had been mistaken, and in order that the story might not be known, and they be treated as fools and ridiculed, they all swore to each other to hold their peace about it until one of them accidentally spoke of it. Then they journeyed onwards. The second danger which they survived cannot be compared to with the first. Some days afterwards, their path led them through a fallow field where a hare was sitting sleeping in the sun. Her ears were standing straight up, and her great glassy eyes were wide open. All of them were alarmed at the sight of the horrible wild beast, and they consulted together as to what would be the least dangerous thing to do. For if they were to run away, they knew that the monster would pursue and swallow them whole. So they said, we must go through a great and dangerous struggle. Boldly ventured is half won." And all 7 grasped the spear, Master Scholes in front and Wheatley behind. Master Scholes was trying to keep the spear back, but Wheatley had become quite brave while behind, and wanted to dash forward and cried, "Strike home in every Swabian's name, or else I wish you may be lame." But Hans knew how to meet this and said, "Thunder and lightning, it's fine to prate, but for dragon hunting you are too late." Michael cried, "Nothing is wanting, not even a hair. Be sure the devil himself is there." Then it was Jurgly's turn to speak. "If it be not, it's at least his mother, or else it's the devil's own stepbrother." Now Marley had a bright thought and said to Wheatley, "Advance, Wheatley, advance, advance, and I behind will hold the lance." Wheatley, however, did not attend to that, and Jackly said, "'Tis Scholes' place the first to be. No one deserves that honor but he." Then Master Scholes plucked up his courage and said gravely, "Then let us boldly advance to the fight, and thus we shall show our valor and might." Then they all together set on the dragon. Master Scholes crossed himself and prayed for God's assistance, but as all this was of no avail, and he was getting nearer and nearer to the enemy, he screamed, "Oh ho! Oh! Oh ho ho!" in the greatest anguish. This awakened the hare, which in great alarm darted swiftly away. When Master Scholes saw her thus flying from the field of battle, he cried in his joy, "Quick, Wheatley, quick, look there, the monster's nothing but a hare." So the Swabian allies went in search of further adventures and came to the Moselle, a mossy, quiet, deep river over which there were a few bridges, and which in many places people have to cross in boats. As the seven Swabians did not know this, they called to a man who was working on the opposite side of the river to know how people contrived to get across. The distance and their way of speaking made the man unable to understand what they wanted, and he said, "What? What?" in the way people speak in the neighborhood of Treves. Master Scholes thought he was saying, "Wade, wade through the water," and as he was the first, began to set out and went into the Moselle. It was not long before he sank in the mud and the deep waves which drove against him, but his hat was blown on the opposite shore by the wind, and a frog sat down beside it and croaked, "Wat, wat, wat." The other 6 on the opposite side heard that and said, "Oho, comrades, Master Scholes is calling us. If he can wade across, why cannot we?" So they all jumped into the water together in a great hurry and were drowned. And thus one frog took the lives of all 6 of them, and not one of the Swabian allies ever reached home again. Yikes. Huh. I don't like that. What do I have to say? What do I have to say? This is a weird one. Okay. First off, be sure you're speaking clearly. I'm guilty of this, but because then it can... It can be bad, because you could die, or just misunderstand. Especially while we're all wearing masks. Speak extra clearly. Okay. Don't act too hastily. No, we'll come back to that. I acted too hastily because I realized there was something else I wanted to say. Okay, so it's like the bravest one gets to be in the front. And the least brave one in the back. And honestly, first off, being in the back is scarier because you can't see whatever's sneaking up on you. Second, sometimes assigning yourself to a stereotype or a role will decrease that. Like if you say, if you're like, "Oh, I'm the brave one here. I'm the brave one." Then suddenly you might find, "Oh, I'm actually not that brave. But I gotta keep up appearances because I said I was brave." Be careful. Okay. Finally, don't act hastily, like I did earlier. Like in both situations, it was this small thing that they blew way out of proportion. Remember, way back, a couple months ago, one of the first couple videos, I talked about the chickens running around with their heads being cut off? No. But it was about chickens, and how if one chicken is freaking out, and then if you introduce a second chicken, the second chicken can either be like, oh, we're freaking out, I don't know why we're freaking out, but we're all freaking out together, and then they just go off of each other. Or if you introduce that second chicken, the second chicken's like, hey, whatever, the first chicken will calm down. So if you're in a group of friends, honestly, this is something so hard. If, like, one friend is going through something, it can be really hard because you're like, because you can either, you have two options essentially. On the one hand, be like, oh my gosh, that's the worst, oh, I'm so sorry, and kind of be up here, or you could be like, okay, let's chill out, let's take it down a couple notches, you know. And honestly, it was just 2 little things, but because there were 7 of them all freaking out, and none of them truly understood the situation and asked questions. They were all just like, this is the situation, oh my gosh, and then they all freaked each other out, and it was bad. So don't act too hastily. Okay. Alright, my gremlins. Thank you for joining us for another Happily Ever After, or not so Happily Ever After. That's up for you to decide. What you decide is valid, because you're valid. You are. Either way, this is the end for today's episode, so tune in later. We can learn more and turn new pages together.